Hi everyone and welcome to One Autistic Person. This is the 38th video in a 50 video series I'm doing going through the statements of the autism quotient. The autism quotient is a pre-screening tool that's often used as part of the assessment process for autism. As I was going through that process, as anybody who has gone through that process will have noticed, we have to look at everything as a deficit, and that's the way it has to be looked at to gain a diagnosis. I started these videos off looking at benefits rather than deficit, and they've sort of morphed into looking at difference rather than deficit, simply because of the fact that the questions become quite repetitive, and I wanted to start looking at it from a different way. And as part of my autistic journey, I'm finding out things about myself, and actually now what I'm seeming to be doing is asking other people what it looks like from their perspective, from a neurotypical perspective, and then me reassessing that, and that's what I've done with this one. If you want to join in, I love people putting comments on what they think about these things, how they experience these things, and how they feel other people might be experiencing them. So if you could drop a comment, I will try my best to answer them, and I'm sure other people would love to hear your advice. I think it's really helpful for autistic people to share their experiences together, and that's the whole reason why I created this channel. So if you want to pop a comment in, brilliant. And obviously if you want to subscribe, if you like my content, then please do so. It's really helpful for the channel. So this is the 38th statement that's on the autism quotient, and that is, I'm good at social chit chat. And for me, this is definitely disagree. But it was a really interesting question, because when I was talking to people around me, they kind of implied that I might have been, that they thought I was good at it. I feel I'm very bad at it, but actually this then comes down to a masking situation. Now, anybody who's been watching my channel for a while will know that I have an aversion to forced masking, but I do understand the fact that we do need to mask. And obviously within my job role, I have had to speak to people, I line manage people, so therefore I have to make those chit chat situations. So I've obviously become very good at masking it. But it does damage me when it's happening, because the whole thing is very difficult. So what I did was I asked people around me and people that have known me across my life from different types of sort of interactions that I've had. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through first of all, I'm going to go through what the neurotypical people in my life thought was happening and what they saw, which was really interesting when on their reflection after I have told them I'm autistic, how that looks, and then how it felt for me. So the first one that I'm going to look at is my housemate. So just a bit of back history on my housemate. My housemate is actually my ex-partner, and we have known each other for 8 years now. So known each other and lived with each other for the last 8 years, which is a long time, because we went from housemate to partner, then to housemate. So it's very much been a journey that we've been on, but he knows me from various different angles in my life. So what he said was, I always thought you were really good at chit chat, but you always said a few things and then moved away, and I would take over the rest. And apparently I did that quite often, that I would I would start a conversation and then I'd walk away from it, but I would have put the seeds in there for a conversation to happen. And I sort of had a script that I would say there would be certain things that I would mention about that person that would then get them talking, and then I could get away from them, even if I knew that person. And then it sort of passed it on. I would always pass it on to somebody else, which was really interesting, because I kind of realised that I did do that. I didn't actually realise that I did it. I was panicking inside. It wasn't anything. It wasn't a thought process. The scripting was a thought process. I thought I would think about what this person enjoys this and this person enjoys that, but I didn't realise I was walking away. But on reflection, I definitely was. He also said when you would go out, you would be smiley and happy, and I thought you enjoyed socialising, but you would come home and lock yourself away for days after getting ill and have to take time off work. So yeah, this is talking sort of like big social events, not like very small things. But if there was like my mum had a house party at New Year's Eve, for instance, then I would have to lock myself away. But I was very happy and smiley throughout it. I often wanted to leave early and lost my energy, but right at the beginning I was always kind of quite in it. That doesn't really happen anymore because I conserve my energy a lot, but and just go with how I feel rather than it being I've got to put this fakeness on with it now, because I don't want to get ill. I mean, I rarely go out to these things anyway. If I did it once a year, it would be a lot. But I feel that that's what I did, and now I know that that's what I was doing. I was putting this big mask on, and that made me look like I was social. So it's really interesting from his perspective. Right at the beginning, before we knew each other that well, he thought I was a very social person, and actually so it shows that I can look like I'm good at doing it, but it doesn't mean that internally that was how it felt. But from his perspective, I seemed very, very good at socializing. He also made the point of the fact we worked together for a while as well. He said, having worked with you at work, you were always super confident and well prepared for anything, but at home you crumble because the dishwasher beeped or a glass wasn't where you last saw it. So this is really interesting because he's kind of got it from both angles, and the next two that I'm going to look at are both work related. But he's also thrown one in there when he said that. But yeah, I understand what he means with that. I get either annoyed or worried about what was that beeping noise, if a glass isn't where it should be, or something isn't where I last saw it, I get very frustrated and very upset and very agitated until I find it. So yeah, it was really interesting to hear it from his perspective, and both from a home life perspective and work life perspective, because I didn't ask him for anything to do with work life, but he sort of gave me that extra little bit in there, so that was great. But it's really interesting that on this, it's very clear that he, especially at the beginning for the first few years of us being together, saw me as a very social person, and somebody who was very good at socializing, but that was when I was masking at my highest. But he also noticed that I was taking time off work and that I was ill. He said, I did notice that, but I didn't realise those two things were linked, as I didn't at that point. I just thought that I just got ill a lot and I got drained and fatigued. I didn't realise the reasons for it. So the next one that I'm going to look at is someone I line managed 12 years ago. So I stopped line managing them 12 years ago. I managed them for 3 years. So let's have a look at somebody who I line managed 12 years ago. So again, he said that I always came across as really confident within my role, and he said you were a great manager and knew your job inside out, and you were always available 24/7 to talk and to chat through anything, especially and always concerned about my welfare, his welfare. When no one was worrying about yours, is what he said. Is you were always worried about everybody else's welfare, but nobody was actually worried. Seemed to be worried about what your welfare was. And I've tried to change the world, but it was obvious that you were fighting against the tide in organisations that at its core simply about profit, which I thought was interesting that he said that, and that I would try to bring people along with me, but it always seemed like I was not getting anywhere with it because I wasn't in the same social aspect as them. I was thinking completely different from a social aspect, and he said I could always tell your mind was somewhere else when there were more than two people in the room. He said I never knew why, but it was clear. It was a clear change when more people were added to the situation. I was always good at public speaking, but in a social group there was always something that he felt was off. He said so I would chat and I would talk to people, but it was very, very strained once there was more than one person. When it was face to face and I knew the person well, like him, then it was fine. But if somebody else came into the situation, he also mentioned customers tried to chit chat with you and you just didn't see that that's what they were doing. You just sort of one word answer them and not be able to go into that sort of chit chat of understanding what they were saying, because it wasn't relative to anything. They'd randomly say something to you, you deal with what they asked you to do as in customer service wise, but you wouldn't go into them talking about anything to asking about your life or telling them about your life. It just didn't really pick up on that. I didn't pick up on that. But yeah, so he always felt like there was something there, but he didn't know what it was, and especially when there were multiple people. And I thought it was really interesting. He said that I was good at public speaking, but not very good at speaking to people individually, or when there's a small group of people. And I would completely agree with that I'm very good in a public speaking situation, more so that because I've been able to plan it and it is to an extent scripted. So yeah, that interesting from someone that I line managed, but he did say you always came across as confident to other people. That's how people saw you, was confident. He said because he knew me and he knew how much I could talk about things, that it was a clear change when other people were around. So the last one I'm going to look at before I sort of break it down from my perspective is someone that managed me 8 years ago. So this is from the flip side of it, what it looked like from that. So yeah, let's have a look at somebody who line managed me 8 years ago. So she started off by saying you loved your job, knew every detail about everything to do with the role, charity in general, the charity that you work for, income generation, events, and how to make money. Understood merchandising like I have never seen before or since. You were the most solution-focused person I have ever worked with. But she also said it was the people that confused you. The fact that the fact people would be devious and manipulate to get what they wanted was always something you didn't understand, and would be very upset when people lied or hid things from you, which they were silly to do because you were always so understanding and found solutions for them. She said you were amazing with investigations and empathized, but remained factual and saw things I never would have, including outcomes and follow-ups. So yeah. So but then all of this was masking for me. I really struggled with all of the things that she said there, but the fact she knew that, and I had such a close relationship with her, we had a very close working relationship. I joined the charity at a time of a lot of change, and it was kind of like there was a battleground situation between everybody in the organisation, and we had to really hanker down to make sure that people weren't being treated incorrectly, because there was a lot of bullying going on. There was a lot of abuse of power and that type of thing, and I'd been taken on in a senior role. She was the person that ran the charity, and we wanted to change the culture, and changing that culture was extremely difficult. So yeah, really interesting that this is what her experience of me asking her about what my masking was like, and how to her could she see it. And here I think she's probably the one that saw it the most, because I probably had to mask the least with her. And I was talking to her quite often about things that were quite complex, and where I was struggling to understand things during things like investigations, and how they took such a massive toll on me. I was very, very poorly throughout my time being there. And I think now looking back on it, it's because I was doing things like investigations where I was having to have that one-to-one social interaction a lot in quite strenuous circumstances. It was interesting, and from an experience perspective was very, very interesting and very helpful for the rest of my career. But I would say that's probably the one that had the biggest drain on me emotionally. And from an autistic response, I was constantly overthinking, and I was melting down, and quite a lot at home at that point. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at what this all felt like for me. So I've kind of looked at it from how my housemate said, what the person I line managed said, and the person I line managed and the person who line managed me said, and sort of come from it from my angle, and have a look at that. So my housemate, I would always talk about things I knew about others, and then move on. As I said previously, I was so tied back when I was masking all the time. I see that now. I always feel I have upset him, that I have said something wrong, something wrong, and then my life will fall apart. So I'm always worried that I'll say something wrong, and that this one person that is there for me all the time and that supports me all the time would disappear from my life, and therefore I'm masking all the time with him, but not for anything that he would do. I don't so much anymore, because he understands things a lot more, but he's also learned when to leave me alone, and we've very much learned to separate from each other when things are problematic, and generally that is coming from me, that I'm overthinking, that I'm overanalyzing, that I'm worried, or he's done something that I think at that moment in time is really frustrating, and whereas actually in reality I need the time to process that and understand that wasn't done on purpose. The person who line managed me, being off sounds right. I would say that at that point in my life, that is where my masking was, that I was struggling quite a lot with social interactions. I was always thinking 5 steps ahead, but getting the next step wrong. So I could be thinking, this is what I need to do, and I kind of thought about this as I was thinking about how masking worked for me from a social perspective, I was always thinking 5 steps ahead, but I was quite often getting the first step that I would have taken wrong. So then that was creating another 5 steps that was going that way. And then I would then go, well, and then that step would be wrong. So I'd have to keep changing. So because I would never get it right, what was going to come next. So I'm trying to preempt what's coming, but what comes is never what I expect it to be. So therefore I can't plan what's happening. And then it just then becomes a major issue for my brain. I always felt like I was managing him wrong, and that I was making his life worse, which is really reassuring to hear back that actually I didn't do that and made his life better. I think this all the time. I think I always make everybody's life around me worse, and it was really nice to hear from him back that that's the way he saw it. And we had a bigger chat about it than that online. We spoke quite a bit about it, and it was really nice to hear what he said. The person who line managed me, she was right. I was focused on the detail of how the job worked and always expected honesty, yet rarely got it. I am always scared my boss is about to realise I'm useless and will sack me. Every call, every email, every meeting. Like I say, I was really close with that line manager, and I felt I thought a lot of her, and I now know that she thought a lot of me. She was very aware of what was going on with me, but I always thought she was going to. The next phone call was the one where she was going to go, actually, you can't do your job, you're rubbish, go. And I still have that thought process to this day, and it's unfounded. I've never been in that situation. So, well, sorry, I've been in that situation once, but it wasn't about being useless. That was a bullying situation from the other person who was bullying various different people. But anyway, that's so I've never actually been in that situation where you've got that sort of accusation of you not being good at your job, because I have always been good at my job. That's the one thing that I can say confidently that I'm good at is understanding the job that I do. The thing that is interesting for me is one, I thought I masked better because it kind of became apparent that people were aware of the fact I was masking, and I didn't really know that. And that people saw positives in me in reality, and in my reality, rather than me masking. So they saw it, the way that I was, as positive. I've always seen it as negative, and I think that's because it's had such a major impact on my life, masking. Because it's so difficult when you are doing it to be aware of the fact you are doing it, but you are slightly aware of the fact that something's off and something's wrong. So and I think that's what's always in the back of your mind. I think there's this thing that's saying you're not being yourself and everyone's going to pick up on it. And the fact that we're often ostracized within society, it does feel like that's reinforced. And this is why I have such an issue with forced masking. Like I say, I know there isn't, I mean, none of this it wasn't forced masking as such, but it was because if I'd have had the choice, I wouldn't have done it. And had I understood it, I would have probably acted differently, and I wouldn't have had the repercussions of it. And actually what's come from that is probably showed that people would have been okay with me not masking, because I would have still cared about people. I would have still done all of those things that were positives. But the social side of it was draining me so much, and probably would have been helpful for me previously. And as I've said on this channel before, I've just gone through a major time of burnout, and I feel like I'm coming out of the other end of it now. I feel like I have got my I say that, and then a few weeks later I might feel completely different, but I feel like I'm getting on top of it. I feel like I'm understanding my brain a lot more. And everybody said this at the beginning of my journey when I was diagnosed. They said after diagnosis you kind of go through this journey of understanding yourself. You spend this time before diagnosis understanding the fact that you might be autistic, then you're told you are, and then you have to accept that fact, and then you have to also make the adaptations to your life. And I've made some huge adaptations to my life to the benefit of things moving forward, I believe. So that's this video done. Thank you very much. As always, like I say, if you drop a comment, I will try my best to respond, and like I say, love to see what other people's experiences of autism are, and I'm sure other people would like to hear your experiences. I think we really should be sharing our autistic experiences with each other. It's all different for all of us, and the more we share it, the more that people can understand what it's like to be an autistic person. So if you want to drop a comment, please do. Like I say, doing things like subscribing, liking and sharing my videos really do help the algorithm to allow my videos to get out to more people. So I would really be really grateful for that. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you on the next video. Thanks. Bye.